Thank you for joining today's educational webinar with Cancer Support Community Los Angeles. I'm Abby Espinoza, the Program Coordinator at CSCLA, and I'm honored to welcome you to this week's webinar titled Nutrition and Breast Cancer, Evidence-Based Strategies for Support and Survivorship. Before we begin, if this is your first time joining us, Cancer Support Community Los Angeles is a premier nonprofit organization providing vital social and emotional support to families facing cancer, including patients, caregivers, and their loved ones, all at no cost. Our programs include support groups, healthy lifestyle classes, social activities, and educational programs such as this one. If you would like to learn more about our services or watch past webinars, please visit our website at cancersupportla.org. Before I introduce today's speaker, please note that your video and microphone are automatically disabled for this webinar. Please enter questions for the speaker into the Q&A feature found at the bottom of the Zoom window. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. You may not be able to get to all your questions today, but we'll get to as many as possible. Please use the chat feature to share comments and resources with other participants or to ask questions of CSCLA. We ask you to limit chat comments to information relevant to this topic. Stephanie Cramer has been a registered dietitian nutritionist since 2005. She is employed with Cedars-Sinai, where she has been working for the past 9 years. Her current role as clinical nutrition coordinator for Cedars-Sinai Cancer, Center for Integrated Research in Cancer and Lifestyle, enables her to work with patients before, during, and after their cancer treatment. It gives me great pleasure to welcome today's speaker, Stephanie Cramer.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Abby, and thank you, Kathy, both of you for having me here today. I'm very excited to be here. Let me share my slides. Like Abby said, I work at Cedars-Sinai and I'm a clinical nutrition coordinator, and I work in the Center for Integrative Research in Cancer and Lifestyle. So I've been at Cedars actually for 10 years this past summer, and I've been a dietitian for 20 years. And I'm also a breast cancer survivor for 9 years. So this topic is near and dear to my heart. And it is October, Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I know that this month can be kind of like triggering or challenging for people. So I just want to share that hopefully this presentation will help answer some questions that you may have, or also help maybe alleviate any anxieties that you may have also. We'll go ahead and get started. So up to 40% of cancer cases may be prevented by reducing exposure to key risk factors such as poor diet quality, physical inactivity, and excess body weight. So I put this slide here I think sometimes with cancer messaging, it can feel like maybe you caused something to get your cancer, or there's something you could have done, but really it is a very complicated disease. And so I look at this more as we have opportunities that we could change our diet and activity and potentially improve our health and reduce any cancer from reoccurring as well. So today, I wanted to first discuss briefly nutrition during cancer treatment, and then also review and discuss nutrition for survivorship. So review the guidelines and that relate to reduction for recommendations for lifestyle factors, and also translate that to daily living and how you can apply that to your daily life. And so to start, for nutrition during your treatment, basically as a dietitian, our goals would be to help minimize any treatment breaks, dose reductions that may occur. And through that, we would help manage nutrition impact symptoms. So managing any nausea, constipation, any taste changes that can occur during chemotherapy. And then also to avoid any excess weight loss or weight gain during treatment. It is more common, I've seen in breast cancer treatment for chemotherapy, that patients often gain weight rather than lose weight. And so we can kind of talk about that as well. And so goals for surgery would be to provide adequate macro and micronutrients for healing. So making sure they're getting enough protein. Micronutrients would be examples like vitamin C, vitamin A, zinc, some omega-3 fatty acids as well. And then also for chemotherapy and radiation, we would recommend avoiding excess vitamin, mineral, and antioxidant intake. And so sometimes it seems counterintuitive. You might want to make sure you're getting enough vitamins and everything, but if you aren't deficient in one of those minerals during treatment, it's better to avoid high doses of those because they could end up kind of protecting the tumor from the treatment. So if you are low in vitamins or minerals, potassium can be one that's commonly low during treatment. That would be something you'd want to replace, but you could also get that through foods as well. So we'd recommend trying to get that intake through foods. And there's also some research you may have heard about fasting during chemotherapy. And we have a study at Cedars right now that's looking at the fasting mimicking diet and prostate cancer. So you may kind of hear some things like that. Also, the ketogenic diet has been looked at during treatment as well with breast cancer. And then nutrition for survivorship. So survivorship really starts at the day of diagnosis. So these things can be implemented even while you're going through treatment as well. So for breast cancer specifically, the core risk reduction recommendations relate to diet and diet quality, alcohol, body weight, and physical activity. So we'll go through each of those specifically. So as far as diet goes, the American Institute for Cancer Research, we go by their guidelines, and they recommend that we have whole grains in our diet, so at least 3 ounces daily. So that would look like a slice of bread, half a cup of cooked rice, cereal or pasta. I know just living in California, some people are more carbohydrate adverse, phobic maybe. Just some of my patients I've had, that seems to be the more macronutrient that people are avoiding these days. But I will say that whole grains offer a lot of key nutrients. And then there was resistant starch was kind of in the news a few months ago. And basically, if you cook rice, pasta, potatoes, and you cook them and then put them in the refrigerator to cool, and if you leave them in for about 12 hours, there's a chemical change happens and the starches become more resistant to digestion. So you actually won't see as big of a blood sugar spike, and you won't digest all of the carbohydrates as you would before while they were hot. So that can be a little trick if you love white rice over brown rice. You can cook a big batch and then let some cool overnight and then use that. And the resistant starch has other benefits as well to your gut microbiome. Also vegetables, including 2 to 4 cups daily, and fruits, 1.5 to 2.5 cups daily. And then legumes, so beans or peas, 1 to 3 cups per week or more. And this is an example of the New American Plate. So it shows having like a variety of different veg or plant foods, and then also having 1/3 or less of animal protein. And this is based on 2,000 calories per day. And the guidelines also recommend limiting red meat to no more than 12 to 18 ounces per week. And typically a serving is like 4 to 6 ounces. So you could definitely still have red meat. It would just be how much you're eating overall. And then to avoid processed meats like bacon, sausage, smoked meats, lunch meats, and hot dogs. Having those less often having ones, there was a study that showed that uncured bacon was a little bit better than cured bacon. So there are ones that are less processed than other ones if you are someone who just really loves your processed meats. Also, the recommendation is to limit fast convenience foods and other processed foods that are high in fat, starches, and sugars. I recently went to Paris for a work conference that they had, and I was a speaker. And one thing I noticed in Paris was that there was not a lot of like fast convenience foods. And that really kind of struck me. And there were times when I didn't plan ahead for food and there was really nothing to eat. So I think there's an opportunity here, especially in America, just to kind of like food is so readily available that it is easy to kind of eat those snack type foods when maybe you aren't hungry or just kind of overeat them, I guess, because they are so readily available. And then also to limit drinks that are sweetened with sugar. So having, water as your beverage. Nowadays there's a lot of flavored waters that don't have added sugar to them. If you don't like plain water, but trying to avoid drinking sodas or like juice with added sugar. And then alcohol, the recommendation is to avoid alcohol. We'll talk about that a little bit more a little later. And I wanted to kind of review some diet patterns because this comes up, like, is there a specific diet that you're supposed to follow? And really the recommendation is to try to have a plant-based diet, which is really having plants at all of your meals. And so we'll kind of go over these kind of more commonly talked about diets and review those. So the Western diet is the kind of common just American diet. It tends to be have an excess of calories, saturated fat, and trans fats, as well as added sugars and sodium, while falling short on essential nutrients like vitamin D, calcium, potassium, and fiber. So a lot of the micronutrients are missing out in the Western diet. And so fiber is something that we talk about for survivorship and aim to get at least 30 grams of dietary fiber per day within your diet. And on average, Americans need to increase their fiber intake by about 12 to 15 grams a day to meet the guidelines, since the average intake is about like 15 grams a day for Americans. And there was a study that showed for every 10 gram of increase of dietary fiber, there was a decrease of 7% reduction in the risk for colorectal cancer. So there are two types of dietary fiber that a lot of foods have a combination of both, but some have a little bit more of one or the other. So the first type is soluble fiber. And that is the type of fiber that acts more like a sponge in your digestive tract. So it'll bind kind of toxins, also things like cholesterol to help bind the excess and excrete it. And so you can find those in like apples, bananas, beans, berries, oats. And then the insoluble fiber acts more like a rake in your digestive tract. And so it kind of helps move things through. And that's going to be more of the whole grains, the skins and peels from fruits and vegetables, and then nuts and seeds. And so it's good to have a combination of those foods in your diet. And those foods also can be helpful for your whole gut microbiome in general, and to which is showing to be beneficial for our health for many different reasons. And so the first diet I wanted to kind of review is the plant-based diet. And so sometimes when we hear this, people think it's just vegan or vegetarian, but animal products can still be included. It just contains mostly plant foods like vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and beans. And these particular foods contain a variety of cancer fighters, including vitamins, minerals, fiber, and the phytochemicals, which are the plant chemicals. And so phytochemicals are naturally occurring compounds, and they protect plants from infection and give plant-based foods color, aroma, and flavor. Phytochemicals do have a lot of different functions in our body, and some of those are to help stimulate the immune system. They block substances we consume from becoming carcinogens. They can also help reduce inflammation, prevent DNA damage, and help with DNA repair, reduce oxidative damage from cells that may spark cancer, and slow the growth rate of cancer. So like as we age and just from kind of just living toxins in our environment, it's beneficial to have these phytochemicals to help kind of repair any damage that can occur as we live our lives. And so there are some specific foods that have phytochemicals that they have found beneficial for breast cancer specifically. Berries, all the berries, blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. They've been shown to decrease estrogen-induced breast cancer and DNA damage in animal studies. And then in human studies, higher consumption was associated with lower markers of inflammation and oxidative stress. Also, I don't have a pointer. Probably have a pointer, but there's broccoli is another one. The cruciferous vegetables in general have been linked to lower risk of breast cancer in human studies. And also there's the dark leafy green vegetables. There's that's soy, the squash, tomatoes, walnuts, and green tea. The walnuts aren't on here, but they've been shown to inhibit the growth of breast, cervix, colon, esophagus, mouth, and prostate cancer cells. We actually just are about to close a study at Cedars where we're looking at walnuts for patients with prostate cancer. So, so hopefully we'll be analyzing that data soon. And then there's some other foods that have phytochemicals that are just helpful for cancer in general, not necessarily specific to breast cancer, but some of those things would be they stimulate enzymes that deactivate the carcinogens, decrease growth of cancer cells. And so those have been found in like apples, coffee, garlic, grapefruit, legumes, tea, both black and green, and whole grains. I will say grapefruit can have some interactions with medications, so just be careful if you're taking medications, you might want to avoid the grapefruit. And then I'm sure you've heard of the Mediterranean diet as well. The Mediterranean diet is similar to the plant-based diet, except that they really eat a lot of fat, specifically olives and olive oil, avocados, nuts, and seeds. It's not uncommon for them to like have at least 3 tablespoons of olive oil a day. Their red meat, high-fat dairy products, and processed foods overall are more limited. And their primary sources of proteins are seafood, beans, peas, lentils, and nuts. So this diet has been heavily studied for a lot of different disease preventions and to help therapeutically with certain diseases. and so the components of this diet are that it is high in plants and the olive oil, the fats from the unsaturated fats versus the saturated fats. And then you've likely heard of vegan vegetarian diets. And so while these are also could be considered plant-based diets, they the vegetarian diet, the only animal products would be eggs or dairy. And then a vegan diet would just not consume any animal products and usually has soy or tempeh as a protein source for that diet. And so there's definitely not one diet that's like necessarily better than the other. Some people prefer, I've had patients that say they feel better when they're vegetarian, and then I have other patients that feel a lot better when they do have some animal products. So I think the main takeaway is to try to make sure to get plants in your diet. So at every time you're eating, try to have some type of plants. And so then those plants that you're eating, those compounds can help kind of protect your cells and just kind of give you the also the micronutrients you need for basic just cellular functions. We wanted to talk about estrogen in foods. There are small amounts of estrogen in animal foods. There's also phytoestrogens that are plant estrogens. And so these studies have found that the phytoestrogens can actually be protective. So if you're getting a good amount of phytoestrogens, your body might not make as much estrogen. And then these phytoestrogens can also attach to tumor cells and instead of the other form of estrogen, which can end up being beneficial. And so there was like 30 years ago a study in soy, and it was, I think, looked at in mice, and the mice metabolize soy differently. So studies have been replicated, and now they found that soy is and can be potentially beneficial for breast cancer survivors for risk reduction. So if you do eat soy, you can continue to eat soy. With that caveat, the recommendation is like no more than 3 servings a day, because kind of probably too much of anything is not good as well. So you don't want to eat too much plant estrogens, but if you're kind of if you eat them already and you're balancing them out, you can continue to do that and they wouldn't be harmful for you. And another thing with breast cancer is meal timing. And there's been some studies that have shown that an overnight fast of 12 hours has been beneficial for reoccurrence of breast cancer, and then also just your longevity and health overall. And so it's recommended to have a 12-hour eating window during the day, and then to have that fast overnight so that your body can kind of repair and remodel all your tissues instead of digesting your meal at night. So I know there is an common, and with just the way our society is it's not uncommon to have dinner as your biggest meal of the day, especially with our work schedules. You may be very busy during the day and not really have time to eat very much during the day. And so then I've seen people will kind of consume a lot of their calories in the evening and then maybe going to bed soon after that. And so if you go to bed too soon after eating like a large meal, then it can also interrupt your sleep. And then your body's also digesting the food, and it's not going to be repairing itself as it would if you didn't have like your biggest meal right before you went to bed. So trying not to eat like a big meal 2 hours before bedtime is one of the recommendations. It is okay to have, like, some people with some conditions need to eat like a snack or so before they go to bed. It's more of try not to like have your biggest meal right before you go to bed. And alcohol, the recommendation, it's best to avoid alcohol for risk reduction. If you do drink, limit intake. For men, no more than 2 drinks a day. And then for women, no more than 1 drink a day. And then I will say that stress, I've had patients that, enjoy like a glass of wine with their friends or their spouse or their significant other. And I would say that if it's more stressful to not have that glass of wine, then I would say the stress can be bad too. So I think it's important to have moderation, and it is important to still enjoy life. So if you do enjoy alcohol, they're doing so in moderation, and like not large amounts can be definitely beneficial for your health. And body weight. So with breast cancer, you might hear a lot about body weight. There's some studies that have shown postmenopausal weight gain was associated with an increased risk. I like to focus more not on just body weight, but more on body composition. So kind of focusing more on maintaining your muscle mass as we get older, and limiting your fat mass, because excess body fat has been shown to increase risk of developing heart disease, blood pressure, or high blood pressure and diabetes. And all of those conditions can be inflammatory. And so if you're constantly inflamed, that could also put you at risk for cancer. So having less body fat and more muscle mass is more healthful. So I would say not necessarily focusing as much as the number on the scale, because because it is important to have that muscle mass. So so I liked this picture because she looks really, really strong doing that. And we'll talk about physical activity as well. So physical activity, the recommendation is to be physically active as part of your everyday life. So try to walk more, sit less. Specifically, try to get at least 150 minutes of moderately intense physical activity per week. And so that's about 30 minutes per day, 5 days per week. And then also to incorporate strength training at least 2 times per week. And I think one of the big things I've noticed, also just from being in Paris, is that in America, there's not as much of an opportunity to walk as much. Everything's just really convenient. We can drive everywhere. And so depending on what your day-to-day life is like, if you work full-time, I seen a lot of patients that have to work, you're stuck in front of your desk all day. So it makes it difficult to kind of move more. But if I liked this term that I heard, exercise snack. And it talks about like thinking of exercise in like little bits, not just like one big thing where I have to go to the gym at the end of the day, but trying to kind of get some physical activity incorporated throughout the day. And so that could be, there was a study that showed doing 15 squats every 45 minutes helped your blood sugar, similar to a 50-minute walk. So you can kind of get up if you do have to sit at your desk all day, maybe like every hour getting up and walking around for like a few minutes, doing some squats, or like going out maybe on your lunch break for a walk, but just trying to really move more. And the movement throughout the day has been shown to be more beneficial than just going to the gym for an hour every day. So it's really just figuring out ways that you can move more and sit less. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about are dietary supplements. This comes up a lot, especially like in the news. Advertisement for supplements are very common. There was a study that showed that cancer survivors obtain more nutrients from supplements, but less from foods for most nutrients. And so the American Institute of Cancer Research advises getting nutrients from food rather than supplements. And this is because it is possible to get too much of one nutrient or phytochemical. So when those nutrients are in foods, they're also interacting with other things, but single doses of or high doses of single supplements have kind of been shown to be harmful in some studies. There was a study that looked at they gave smokers vitamin A, and there ended up being an increased incidence of lung cancer in the patients that were smokers that had that supplement. So they ended up stopping the trial. So sometimes like too much of something can be not good. So that's why we kind of recommend trying to get the nutrients from foods first. And then if you're having trouble, for example, vitamin D is common that people are deficient in. That would be something that is a little harder to get from food. And we metabolize it from the sun, but with skin cancer, that you might be limiting that. So so it may be appropriate to take a vitamin D supplement if you are low, and if you also for other nutrients, if you do suspect or know that you are low, then it would be good to replace those. One of the issues is that in the United States, supplements are not regulated the same way as other food and drug products. So companies, if there are there is third-party testing done on certain supplements, and so there are companies that that we know that have been tested, and so we know that what they're saying is in their supplement is actually in the supplement. There have been cases where companies will say, X, Y, and Z is in here, but then when it's tested, it actually is maybe a much lower dose. And so you do just want to be very careful and kind of make sure that the supplement is coming from a source that has been third-party tested. And then also just when you get nutrients from plant foods, you also get many of the other beneficial compounds. So, and you wouldn't be getting those in the supplement. So that's the other reason why we would encourage foods, trying to get it from foods first. And then I guess this was something I thought was interesting. The US Poison Control Centers received 70,000 calls in like 2019 due to supplements. And so I actually used to work in an ICU where they did liver transplants, and we would sometimes get patients that had taken a supplement and ended up causing like liver failure for one reason or another. So they can be harmful. So just be careful, have caution. And so we could translate that to the plate. So instead of just supplements, we could try to add the colorful foods to our meals that we're already eating. For example, breakfast, if you're having oatmeal that has a good amount of fiber in it, you could add blueberries. Apples are in season right now as well. For lunch, butternut squash soup could be a good option. A snack idea could be walnuts with a persimmon. Persimmons are in season right now. And then for dinner, you could have salmon, and then dark leafy green salad with feta cheese and dressing, obviously. And if you aren't someone that really loves fruits or vegetables, I would encourage you to try one of the farmers markets in Los Angeles or in the area. There's tons of them. And one of the fun things you can do is kind of eat by the season. So every season, obviously, certain foods are going to be in season at different times. And I have found I go to the Beverly Hills Farmers Market on Sundays, and the apples there are pretty much the best apples I've ever eaten, and I can't eat another apple. Like, I have to get their apples. They're just so good. So that could be something, kind of eating the foods that are in season so they may be more flavorful, or just some tips if you aren't really like a big vegetable eater or fruit eater. The farmers markets definitely have the fresh food, so it tends to be really flavorful. And some other just practical tips for daily life, just keeping it easy. If you're, a lot of us are really busy. You can make smoothies, especially if you're not really a big breakfast eater, or if you're just kind of are on the go. You could put a lot of great stuff into a smoothie. Also, like snack plates. I'm really big on just keeping things simple. Also, exercise. If you're not, if you are going through treatment, if you don't have a lot of energy at the time, still doing gentle exercises like just walking, stretching, like yoga especially is great, but continuing to move. And then also mindful eating. So I think it's really important to listen to your body's hunger and fullness cues. During certain medications or treatment can kind of affect those cues, but if you're not on treatment, I think it definitely is a good idea to pay attention to those, because sometimes we might be bored, or maybe you are like busy and you're not paying attention to your eating, so you kind of end up eating more than you would. So just kind of paying attention to your body. And then it's very important, I think, to have joy and pleasure in eating. So food, we can enjoy food with other people. I definitely think that you should still be able to enjoy food and not have to like eliminate things that you enjoy eating. So like, all foods can fit into a healthy diet. Like, I'll admit that I love French fries. And so I still eat those, but not all the time. I really like this resource. The authors came and spoke at a webinar at Cedars, and I think it's really important. Obviously, diet's important, but it is also important just to also have these other things for health. So exercise. How is your environment that you're living in? Like if you're living in a toxic environment that has a lot of chemicals or things that can mold, that can affect your health. Also, having love and support. So if you are like single or live alone, having some support in the community so that you aren't alone. And then also sleep is very important, getting adequate sleep, and then also managing your stress. So these things can all be helpful for your health. And so I just thought this was a good resource that I like. And these are some of the studies that we have going at Cedars for the CIRCL department. And we have the chart cherry and omega-3s for aromatase inhibitor musculoskeletal symptoms. And so this one is for breast cancer patients, and it's open right now. We also have a study where we're looking at patients with newly diagnosed glioblastoma, and they are randomized to either the ketogenic diet versus a standard diet with their standard of care treatment, which would still be chemotherapy and radiation. And then we also have a study where we're looking at urolithin A supplementation in men with prostate cancer undergoing radical prostatectomy. And our other one is the fasting mimicking diet to improve prostate cancer control and metabolic outcomes. And then walnuts for power. And this one we are just about to close. And so these are all have links, and I can share my slides at the end, but if you're interested in any of those, you can click on the links to get more information about them. And then I also have my email here. And so you can feel free to email me any questions, and I will take questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for your very informative presentation. Now we do welcome all of our participants to put any questions you may have into the Q&A feature found at the bottom of your Zoom window. And we have received a few, so we can go ahead and get started with those. So someone is asking, in regards to excess in vitamins and minerals during treatment, how much would be too much?
So a standard multivitamin, if you look at the back of the label, would usually have about 100% of the RDA. You don't want to go, you would want to look at the label and not have nutrients that are over 100% of the RDA or the RDI. And so you'd want to look at the dosage. There's generally like a 1 a day multivitamin they won't have excess of doses. So typically a multivitamin can be okay, but like a lot of times single nutrients or single doses of vitamins and minerals might be too high. So it's on the label, if it's over 100%, then you'd want to avoid that one during treatment.
Perfect, thank you. And then they had a follow-up question. Blueberries are great antioxidants. Should those be avoided?
So we don't recommend avoiding like the foods during treatment or anything, but there really isn't any research on that. But because typically the dose in like a supplement would be much higher than the antioxidants you're getting from the blueberries. So we would say you could still eat some blueberries.
Okay, thank you. And then what supplement companies do you suggest?
I don't have really any off the top of my head. It kind of is, I think specific on the nutrient one. I don't really have any that I specifically recommend offhand. Okay,
thank you. And then we did receive a few questions during registration. We got quite a few questions regarding sugar and specifically post-treatment. Can you tell us a little bit more information on your take on sugar and also artificial sweeteners?
Yeah, so sugar, in terms of for survivorship, the recommendation is to try to not have more than 10% of your diet is added sugars. So that to not get into like the weeds of what the grams, basically, like you can still have sugar. You would just want to kind of be careful of how much added sugar. So nowadays sugar is added to a lot of things, even like salad dressings, pasta sauces, things like that. So if you're consuming like foods, like more packaged foods, then you would want to kind of watch how much added sugar that you're eating kind of overall. The research has kind of specifically shown that the sugar sweetened beverages are have been shown to be like much worse for your health than just regular sugar that people are eating. So avoiding the sugar sweetened beverages, but I would say that like people, you can still like eat dessert. In terms of like treatment, that is being investigated. We are with the glioblastoma study, there is some evidence that limiting the amount of glucose that the patient has can potentially help with the tumor growth. And so we are that is currently being studied. It's being studied in some of other cancers as well. So I would say, as just like personally, if I was to get cancer again, if I was going through treatment, I would watch how much like sugars that I am eating so that your like glucose isn't too high. But in general, you still want to get like carbohydrates and fiber for your health. So but I would say like avoiding like simple sugars could be beneficial. In terms of artificial sweeteners, those can be used as a substitute. There have like stevia is the more natural artificial sweetener. I think you could definitely, I would recommend you could use those to substitute for the sugar.
Perfect, thank you. And then someone is asking if you have any daily recommendations for protein.
So the recommendation, the recommended daily allowance is 0.8 grams per kilo of your body weight. And protein is now the newer macronutrient that's being like pushed. And I feel like more than getting enough protein is important. So there have been, if you're exercising, you may need a little bit more protein. So you might need more like 1 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of your body weight. So it is definitely important as we age to get enough protein. But also you don't want to get too much protein, because if you're eating more protein than your body needs, it's just going to break it down and either kind of store it as fat or like excrete what you're not using. So yeah, so kind of trying to figure out how much, like, but generally 0.8 to 1 gram per kilogram is kind of the recommendation for most people.
Perfect, thank you. And then can you talk a little bit more about the science/benefit behind the 12-hour fast for breast cancer?
Yeah, so I think the fasting is interesting because even like just with intermittent fasting, it kind of comes up a lot. And with the word breakfast is actually means break the fast. So we have always been having this fast overnight. And so the theory in the science is that your cells need to be remodeled and reprocessed and everything. So if your body is fasting, it's able to do that instead of digesting foods and doing that whole process. So having that fast is allowing your cells to kind of regenerate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then someone has a question about flax seeds, saying they were concerned about eating flax seeds with breast cancer. If they are okay, are ground flax seeds better than whole flax seeds?
Yeah, so I think that may be because flax seeds are a phytoestrogen, that they like too much, you wouldn't want to eat too much, but there have been studies that have shown that flax seeds like are beneficial for breast cancer. So I think the ground ones would be probably the easier. I think it would just be easier to probably like eat ground. But people do, you could kind of spread them on things, but I think it kind of depends. I'd probably recommend more ground, but I think it just depends how you're eating them. But.
Perfect, thank you. And then Can you discuss a little bit about the topic of soy in the diet of breast cancer survivors and what are the facts versus the myths about this?
Yeah, as I kind of mentioned, soy was when they first studied it, it was metabolized differently in rodents. And so then when they replicated the studies on humans, they found that it wasn't metabolized the same way. And that since it is a phytoestrogen, it actually can bind to estrogen receptors and actually is beneficial because it would bind to the receptor versus our own estrogen. And so, and then when they've looked at other countries that have higher intakes of soy, there aren't higher incidences of breast cancer in those. And yeah, so it can be beneficial, the phytoestrogens in this way.
Perfect, thank you. And then we've gotten a few people saying that they have trouble making meals because they have low energy due to treatments and a number of different things. Do you have any practical tips or any recommendations?
Yeah, I think that's where if like smoothies, if you do have a blender, they do have nowadays there's a lot of nutrition supplements, like the oral nutrition supplements, like they used to just have Ensure, but now there's a lot of different brands. Like I had a lot of patients like that, like Owen, the OWIN, so they're already kind of readily made nutrition shakes that have a good amount of calories and protein in them. So you could have some of those on hand. Having some foods that are kind of more like easier to make, like something kind of like a soups or cereals or oatmeals. Even just having some frozen foods that you could maybe like reheat and warm up. Just because things are frozen doesn't mean that they're necessarily less nutritious, but definitely like soups, I think could be helpful, especially since they have the hydration in the soups can be also beneficial. So kind of just trying to find some easy things that you definitely don't have to like take long to prepare.
Thank you. And then do you know any foods that help with fatigue?
Well, carbohydrates in general help kind of give us our energy. So getting like adequate nutrition in general, but then making sure you're getting carbohydrates will help with that. They also have a lot of the B vitamins, which helps. So making sure you kind of are getting enough of that could help potentially.
Perfect. And then just one final question. Are there any specific foods that you recommend cancer survivors never eat or eat very infrequently? I know you briefly touched on alcohol, but is there anything else?
I would say just the one slide where, kind of mentions like limiting like processed meats and fast foods and things, but there's not anything that you can't eat. I would just say just things in moderation. So if the majority of your diet, if you're getting like plants in your diet, then yeah, you could add some extra stuff in. I think that would be harmful.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for taking the time to be here with us today. We truly appreciate you and everything you shared with us today. We do have one final closing slide that we would like to share. Just a little bit more information about CSCLA. Yeah, so thank you to all of our attendees for your engagement and for being here with us today. If you would like to learn more about Cancer Support Community Los Angeles, please feel free to visit our website at cancersupportla.org. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email us at info@cancersupportla.org. Stephanie has also graciously agreed to share a copy of her slides. So if you would like to request a copy, please feel free to email us. We also wanted to share about a breast cancer group that we have. Kathy will show it on the screen briefly. But we do have a breast cancer group that meets virtually. And if you would like to learn more information about that, please feel free to check out our website at cancersupportla.org. Again, we want to thank our attendees and Stephanie once again, and we hope to see you all at a future webinar. Thank you, everyone.